gavel.
I'm going to rip it. Just so that you shut up about it.
Get you one like the speaker in the house.
Oh,
right?
no,
It's like this
no,
big.
please don't. Please don't. We good? I now call to order the Tuesday, October 12th, 2021 meeting of the City of Sugar Land Planning and Zoning Commission. Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. Before we go on to our agenda items, there are two things that I'd like to do. The first is I'd like to have a moment of silence for the passing of Carl Stevens. As I believe most of you, everyone on commission knows, and for those here and watching know, Carl was a valued member of this commission for many, many years. He left his imprint on this commission and on the city in a number of different ways, and I'd like to just take a moment of silence to remember him at this time and recognize his passing. Thank you very much. I would also, in an unrelated item, I'd also like to introduce the newest member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that's Mary Smith. Mary is joining us virtually this evening. And Mary, welcome virtually, and we're glad to have you with us, and we look forward to having you with us in person sometime soon.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Now we can get on to business. We will go to item 3, public comment. Members of the public desiring to either submit written comments or to participate through option 2 or option 3 who want to address the commission may do so at this time. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment? All right, then we will move on to item 4A, consideration and action on the minutes of the September 14, 2021 meeting. Those have been prepared and in your packets. Any discussion on the minutes? Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Landine and a second from Commissioner Simeon. If you'll vote at this time, please.
I'm sorry, I'm not logged into Novus, so it's not letting me.
I want to make sure Mary can vote too. Okay, well, it seems like it passed unanimously, so we will take that and we will move on to item 5A. Thank you for your help. 5A, orientation, review of and discussion on Planning and Zoning Commission roles and responsibilities. And we've got several folks for that. We've got Lisa Kosich-Meyer, it looks like, Doug Schomburg, Ruth Lomer, and Lauren Fair, and Angeli Thomas. Man, we need a lot of refreshing and a lot of training apparently, so Lisa, take it away.
No, absolutely. We are all here going to take part in this to give you an overview of your roles and responsibilities. For many of you, obviously, it is a refresher, but we're happy that Commissioner Smith can join us because it'll be a great introduction for her as well. So we have a lot of slides to cover, so I'm just going to jump right in there. So per some policy that the City Council has set under the Boards and Commissions Policies and Procedures, we are to provide you an annual orientation via workshop to all boards and commissions. And so as part of this workshop, we're going to review your roles, responsibilities, and attendance requirements, all of the authority limitations that you have set under state statutes, city charter, and city codes, review some policies and procedures, go over materials and various topics that you will see as a commission coming forward to you. We're going to give you a brief look ahead at kind of what we are calling our work plan, our annual work plan for you of the 2022 year. And then Angeli Thomas, our city attorney representative, will be going over some legal considerations for you, including Open Meetings Act, conflict of interest, and disclosures. So just to quickly highlight, you as the Planning and Zoning Commission, you are appointed by the City Council. You serve on 2-year staggered terms. Your authorization comes from several different places, starting kind of at the higher level. The highest level is state law. It allows municipalities to appoint zoning commissions to exercise zoning powers granted to the city by the state. Via our city charter, it created a Planning and Zoning Commission. It sets the terms that you serve. It also establishes your specific duties and responsibilities, which are a recommending body for most functions that come before you and most types of cases that come before you. And then you are also the final authority for plat approval. And then our Sugarland Code of Ordinances also outlines several of these things, as well as some of your specific procedures. It categorizes the commission as an administrative board, so that means you have final decision-making authority, and again, but that is a very limited scope with plats. It again covers the terms that you serve. It defines the appointment process for the chair and the vice chair, which serve in one-year terms. It also establishes the attendance expectations, which we'll cover in a bit. It also outlines the expectation for voting and compliance with any conflict of interest provisions that are set by state law. And then also it specifies that you must serve without any compensation and you may not hold another public office with authority in the city or ETJ. So looking at specifically at state law, there are kind of three areas that we focus on that are most applicable to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And those are chapters 211, which sets out the provisions of the zoning regulations that cities are allowed to have. Chapter 212, which governs the subdivision regulations. And then chapter 213, which focuses on comprehensive planning. And we'll go over all of those in more detail throughout the remainder of the presentation. To touch on attendance specifically, so members are expected to be available and to attend most meetings. If a member becomes unable to attend most meetings, then the member should submit your resignation so that a replacement can be appointed. Likewise, City Council may dismiss a member for any type of poor attendance, and how that is kind of defined or classified is missing 3 successive meetings, of course, unless there are special circumstances, and those absences are deemed to be admissible. So if not, then you will have deemed to automatically have resigned your position from the commission. So touched on this briefly, but for your specific duties and responsibilities, again, you have a role in taking action and then also making recommendations to the City Council. So you take action specifically on plats. You're either approving with conditions, or disapproving with reasons. Plats that come before you that are provided, those provisions are provided by state law and of course city ordinance as well. And you are making recommendations to the City Council, whether that's to approve or disapprove an item on all other types of cases that come before you. So that is anything related to proposed changes in zoning regulations or map changes, so rezoning of property, the master plans that are presented to you as they go through amendments and updates. Annually, the city's 5-year CIP capital improvement projects, and then any other special projects or that may be assigned to you by City Council or by ordinance over time. So specifically with your with plats that come before you, this is an area where you have limited discretion. You look to ensure that the plats that come before you are in compliance with the development code, also as well as any of the specific requirements that are listed and adopted in the policies and procedures, such as graphic requirements, the specific master notes that must be present and included on plats. In terms of your limited discretion, if it meets state law and the development code, then it must be approved. And more recently, with some of the state law changes, any conditions of approval or reasons for denial must have a very specific citing of what code requirement it is deemed deficient in or needs to be corrected. So that has to be very specific and documented and included as part of your decision. In many of the other cases that are coming before you, we ask or we encourage you to look at keeping the vision of the city in mind, so keeping kind of that long-range view, the goals and objectives in mind when rezoning cases or other types of cases are coming before you. You also have a unique role in representing community values and perspective, being residents all yourselves. So you'll get that in the form of public input through public hearings and so forth. Also, we ask that you be objective, but also consistent in terms of how you apply the rules, policies, procedures, and so forth. So like requests get treated like each other. So in terms of also specific to the Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council policy sets out that in addition to your annual orientation that we are providing, like tonight, the commission also attend board training and educational opportunities. So we typically accomplish that, or the main opportunity we have is through attending the annual Texas APA, American Planning Association Texas Chapter Conference, which will be coming up. I'm happy to hear that many of you will be able to participate. We'll also look for other opportunities through other organizations, whether it's ULI or maybe even other chapters within the state that might be able to provide some type of or programming that is kind of on the caliber of the state conference. So we'll definitely look for those other opportunities as well. But that is one of the unique requirements that council has set out for the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then, of course, as topics maybe come up throughout the year, we'll also be available to provide training on other topics as necessary. And of course, if there's anything in particular you as the commission would have an interest in kind of doing a deeper dive on, we're always happy to accommodate that through additional training and workshops. So for us as the staff role and liaison to you, the Planning and Development Services Department is your main department that is providing that staff support. We are very fortunate that we have professional level planning staff. We have 5 accredited planners on staff, which is a great accomplishment. We advise you, the commission, and prepare your case materials. We are coordinating the public hearings and all of the statutory requirements to make sure that we're meeting all of those. And of course, coordinating public input to make sure people know how to come to the commission to provide you input. And then we're also coordinating with other departments, other staff in other departments to ensure that that expertise is also being brought to you when you're considering cases. So we work very closely with the engineering department. They assist with very technical information and review, traffic impact analysis, drainage information, things of that nature. So we're kind of behind the scenes working to provide citizens and the development community with information on our processes and how to prepare information as they're coming forward to you for public hearings or presenting their cases. And then, of course, we're also facilitating, providing technical recommendations to you as the commission for cases that come before you that you are a recommending body on to either city council and, of course, for any plats that you are approving. So with that is kind of very high level. I'm going to turn it over to Ruth Lomer now, and she's going to walk you through kind of considerations on the long range side.
Good evening, commissioners. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about the comprehensive plan first. So the Texas Local Government Code establishes that cities can do comprehensive planning in Chapter 213, and then it also talks about zoning in 211. In Texas, a comprehensive plan is optional. For us in Sugar Land, we think it's a pretty good idea to do it. We think it's good when other cities do too. Zoning is also optional. You may know that our big sister, big brother up the road, Houston, does not have zoning, and there's a few other cities here in the state. However, it does say that if you have zoning, then you have to have a comprehensive plan. And also, if you have a comprehensive plan, you have to follow it. Also a good idea. So what is a comprehensive plan? It tells us where we are now and where we want to go in the future. It's a physical plan. It looks at kind of where and how we want to grow. It's long range, assuming kind of the total build out of a city and also typically looking at the ETJ. It's comprehensive in that it looks at kind of all aspects of the city and is policy guidance and direction and guides our master plans. So we have chapters 1 through 5 of the comprehensive plan were adopted in July of 2012. They included the last 2010 census and demographic updates from that time frame, and also included the council adopted Vision 2025 as goals A through K. And then a little more recently, we adopted chapter 6, the land use plan, which was updated in August of 2018. So these are the goals that are established in the comprehensive plan, goals A through K. As you can see, there's a variety ranging from safe community, beautiful community, all the way through community pride in Sugar Land, so touching on a lot of different aspects of community life here in Sugar Land. And then we have the 2018 land use plan, which that update focused on addressing redevelopment, multifamily, and how we wanted to deal with the remaining vacant areas in the city. The future land use map addressed or included some new land use categories, including regional activity centers, neighborhood activity centers, and company town neighborhoods. And you probably have started to hear more and more about these categories as we've started bringing some cases forward. And you saw the Hill Community Engagement come forward earlier this year, so that's related to the company town neighborhoods. These are the land use plan goals, and so these are specific to land use in the city, where we talk about preserving single-family neighborhoods, creating mixed-use activity centers, addressing redevelopment, fostering redevelopment, and all the way through celebrating Sugar Land. So in addition to the comprehensive plan, we also have our master plans, which are considered elements of the comprehensive plan. We have 8 official master plans ranging from the land use plan, which I mentioned, pedestrian and bicycle master plan, facilities, water, wastewater. So we've got a handful actually that are under update right now, and you'll be seeing a couple of those coming forward in the next couple of months, the water and the wastewater master plans. But these all address a particular element of the city. So obviously the water master plan tells us how we address water in the city and the ETJ. How do we provide service to our citizens? Addresses policy issues related to that. So each year we prepare a master plan annual report, which provides a status update on our master plans. So we want to make sure that these are plans that are not just sitting on a shelf, that they're actually being used. And so the master plan annual reports show the progress of the projects that are identified in the master plans, and also identify the timing of the next update for the master plan. So we really take that opportunity to evaluate how far along are we in the implementation. Is the policy guidance that's in that plan still applicable today as it was, when it was adopted last? And then that annual report also helps us make the connection between master plans and the capital improvement program. So a lot of our capital improvement projects do come out of the master plans that are specifically identified there. So there's a really important connection. And I'll be back in a little bit to tell you a little bit more about some projects we're working on. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Doug, who's going to talk to you about some development processes.
Thanks, Ruth. So this evening, and I'll try to kind of move through this fairly quickly, this covers a lot of the types of cases that the Commission usually deals with, the types of elements that are either zoning-based or subdivision regulations-based, and how those eventually get to the whole site development. So the Development Code, Chapter 2, is our zoning. Standard districts are defined, processes. Those include things like the rezonings, conditional use permits, and plan development, PD, those types of things. And then Chapter 5 is the subdivision regulations, periodically general land plans, preliminary and final platting, and things like the minimum, what we call the bulk regulations for things like sizes, setbacks, the various things that form the plats, the various things that form the actual construction plans when the areas are laid out. So with Chapter 2, our zoning, and those include both the idea of what we call permanent zoning, which is going from an interim category, interim R1, for example, like we've had with New Territory after it was annexed, and then moving to permanent R1, or a rezoning going from one standard district to another, and then conditional use permits where a use is looked at very specifically for a specific spot, and are there conditions that may make that more palatable or mitigate things. You're a recommending body, as Lisa had said, to the council on those cases that are legislative in nature for the council to actually approve or deny, and they take your recommendation into account. And that's one of the things state law actually says, is they will receive the report of the commission. In fact, it's more specific than staff. We do provide them with our recommendation too, but the state law actually says receive the report of the commission for those legislative items. As part of that, you may also be dealing with recommending on, as Ruth covered, the comp plan chapters, things that are related to master plans and drilling down specifically. So we do ask when we look to those, you as the recommending body, focus on those governing documents, the codes, policies, comprehensive planning, and as Lisa mentioned, compatibility, and look at long-term approaches to planning, long-term aspects. So we mentioned a little bit, I won't go into too much more on the permanent type zoning. It doesn't mean that no one can ever ask for a different zoning. It just means you're taking it out of an interim category, which is always based on annexation. State law does not let permanent zoning be put on a property until you've had a separate public hearing. That way, the interim is in place until permanent zoning comes into play. Sometimes that's left there until an applicant, if it's a smaller piece, they may decide they want to have something more specific, like an R1Z, for example, zero lot line homes. Silva Tract, I did mention here, this is one that Laura had actually worked on about 2 years ago, which had been an interim category, and that was the owner wanted to go ahead and go to a zero lot line. And so it was interim, they went to a zero lot line rather than permanent R1. Plan development, custom zoning districts. Council determined where appropriate for some large scale. For example, the Imperial development, they determined that it was appropriate to develop the commercial and residential in a PD, or Telfair's commercial. That was another element that was sort of directed by council. They wanted to have that PD type zoning for it. A developer can request it, or the city can initiate, but normally that is a developer requested because they are wanting to do a mix of uses or some kind of alternative standards that would not fit in a standard zoning district. There are specifics in the code that require it to be of high quality, contain a layout plan so that you know the general placement of where buildings and or other areas like parking lots or green space would be, and the future land use plan as well as the code provide additional guidance and criteria when the commission looks at those. PD components, one of the things that you're always going to have is a custom use list for the PD. What are the uses that are proposed in it? You're going to have, like we said, that site plan, pedestrian circulation and those ped bike elements, as well as other circulation such as streets, depending on the size, are going to be real important, as well as looking at landscaping, buffering, screening, those types of things. We do review and make comments with an applicant prior to P&Z review, sometimes going through some iterations of that. And the development code does have certain minimum requirements for the submittal itself. So I'm going to briefly touch on a one-step or two-step process. One-step process is basically when someone goes and presents their final development plan to the commission. Hey, we have these details, we are ready, we want to go ahead and move forward. And that final development plan basically, once it's approved by council, allows them to go ahead and move forward with building permit requests. If they do a two-step, that general development plan, and we call it GDP for short, is more of is what the name says, it's more generalized. It is usually used for very large acreages. Imperial is one that had looked at that in a more general way, had a lot of acreage, a lot of generally road framework, those type of things. A lot of developers move to the final, but there are a few cases for large acreage that you have this more general development plan. A GDP does not give any rights to go ahead and submit site planning and building permits. A final does. So in some cases, the developer's ready to go ahead and move forward with a final rather than go through the two-step plan. And they have the right to do that. Final development plan does include all that information if it's a two-step from the general development plan, but it's moving again, focusing closer in on final layout, final details. We're going to shift to conditional use permit, CUP for short. And we mentioned briefly, this is maybe a use is appropriate in a commercial district, for example, but it may depend on location. There are some areas that have more residential proximity depending on it. There are some areas where maybe a use is more intensive versus others. Site-by-site determination, I think that's important to remember, is that one site may be more appropriate, one site may not. Some examples, these are just a few examples of CUP type items. For example, in our general business B2, things like hotels, private schools, churches when it is in residential, auto-related uses, everything from the gas sales to things such as car wash or auto-related, as we have on the agenda this evening with the Porsche site. Going through the conditional use permit, looking at impact to immediate area, looking at their layout plan, their proposal, any conditions. P&Z recommending on those, again, to council. Denial if the commission determines the impacts can't be mitigated, or approval with specific conditions. These are usually site-related. Physical is the best versus operational. But again, dealing with the buffering, the landscaping, screening, size limitations, or some other special, in some cases, directional type. So those are the types of elements that are then incorporated into the conditional use permit. And again, one of the things that I've tried to say when we've done the orientations over the years is just because a site may need mitigation does not mean that it's necessarily not suitable at a spot. It's not a matter of, well, if it needs several things, maybe we shouldn't approve it. It shouldn't be misconstrued as that there could be the inability to adequately mitigate something, but because conditions may be recommended doesn't mean necessarily that an item, a use is not appropriate at a site. We do try to recommend, if we've had a similar type case in the past, we want to give you all information about that. What were some of the conditions that predecessors may have looked at on P&Z and or council, things like that. Technical information, again, sometimes studies. Engineering with the traffic impact. There may be other type studies. We've had in one case a number of years back with a particular item that was going to have quite a bit of noise potential, looked at a little bit of a noise study. Again, these are just depending on what's in front of you and what's being considered. Layout plan, a little bit more mini, but a layout plan kind of like the PDs, but in a more smaller scale sense is with that, and that usually includes several exhibits such as landscaping or building elevations, things like that, that are codified when it's approved. We'll move to the subdivision process, and again, I know this is a lot of information, but y'all do work with this in general, and I know that this is something that kind of flows once a person gets a feel for it. Chapter 5 of the subdivision regulations. Most cities, even if they don't have zoning, have some type of subdivision process under state law, and they generally have at least a preliminary platting and a final platting, an administrative platting. We do have a general land plan. Some cities call that a concept plan or an initial type land planning, and it's to lay out the big picture before you do any platting. General land plan review, I'm going to show you two examples, but we can think of areas like Telfair, for example, which have residential components, commercial components, some mixed-use area, and then they have some large-scale buffering. They have public parkland as well as private parkland, and then some public facilities. The major streets from our city's thoroughfare plan, arterials and collectors are shown, and then P&Z for those is a recommending body, council is an approving body. Once you get down to the actual platting after the general land plan, then Planning and Zoning Commission is the final authority. But the land plans, again, are usually for very large acreage sites. Here we have, on the left and right, we've got the Telfair General Land Plan, again, just real briefly, and we've got the Imperial General Land Plan. These are the most current plans. These have color-coded areas, for example, the yellow residential, the main streets, as we said, arterials or collectors are shown. And again, ultimately, zoning as well as subdivision platting flows from this type of a document. In some cases, these also have a council-approved development agreement that go with them. But again, this is taking those large areas of acreage and starting to component them into quadrants, the main ways to get around. And then there's special buffering in some cases. There was particular buffering that went on in the Imperial area, especially towards some of the older parts of the city, for example. And there was buffering in the Telfair area with a number of the drainage ditches in that going from residential to commercial. Plat review, as Lisa mentioned, the platting is a case where the state has recently reinforced the need to keep a very narrow line with the platting. In 2019, some of those state law changes had made sure that commissions for approving a plat, if there's conditions, clearly state the conditions, and they need to be code-based, or if a plat is ultimately denied, it needs to be denied for very specific reasons, code-based reasons. The city had generally done a good job with that, but again, this is now literally mandated in the state law. The subdivision regulations literally lay out, again, bulk standards. They lay out the minimum size in districts, all of those type of things. And then when not in the ETJ, when in the city, you have the zoning additionally for that. Preliminary plat for a site that triggers preliminary platting. Again, we're going to look at subdivision regulations. We're going to look at compliance with zoning if it's in our city limits. If it's in an area where a general land plan was approved, we don't want the plat to not be in accordance with the general land plan. And then again, looking, what are your components? The layouts of the streets and lot dimensions, the building setbacks. P&Z action is the final authority. What a preliminary plat is not is to the multiple dimension lines. It's not required to be prepared by a surveyor. It is to essentially get the blessing of the general street layouts and the overall lots matching in and how it fits into an area. And most of the time, this is an example of one of the Riverstone ones, and I'm going to show you its final plat sister here in a second. We can see here there are contours, there are some of the major streets, and there are the general lot layouts. Area around it is ghosted in just to show how it fits in. This doesn't have survey line tables, any of those types of things. This doesn't have all those ownership blocks or titles. Final plat review is more specific. It needs to be suitable for recording at county clerk's office. It needs to be in compliance with the preliminary that was done before it. But again, specific layouts, dimensions, radius, the setbacks, the easements, all those certification blocks, all of those key elements must be prepared by a registered professional land surveyor. And staff will have reviewed, especially the engineering department, construction plans related to any infrastructure with it, the streets, drainage, utilities, those types of things. P&Z is then the final authority. And here we see that same area. This is not the signature sheet, but this is a sheet. In this, we've got all the dimensions, either on the plat, in the land layout boundary, or in the tables. We've got master notes, we've got to the decimal point and measurements, and all of those types of information with it, the surrounding recorded information for whatever land is with it. And again, in this report, staff would have acknowledged anything in the general land plan, anything from the preliminary moving toward it, are we in compliance with those types of things. Last little bit about kind of a unique thing. This is something that if we did have a case, we would have a specific orientation for y'all digging in a little deeper. But in certain cases, the Planning and Zoning Commissions would serve as the city's airport zoning commission. And what does that all mean? What that means is that the airport has land use regulations in terms of areas specific in the city that are near the airport. These are not height-based. Height-based elements do go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and which some of you have served in over time, but the ZBA would have a special role as the zoning Board of Adjustment for the airport height in that case. Yours would be land use related. And so if there is a zone to be added to or changed, it would come to the commission for a recommendation and ultimately go to council. This has happened about 3 times based on the last, I would say, 15 years. Some of the land in Telfair, a little bit of the land in Imperial. As part of development agreements with the council, the city got some navigation-related easements over some of the property and changed some of the zoning. So again, you'd be in a recommending body, and we would do a special briefing because this doesn't come up a lot. But again, when you would meet in that, you would basically be under that title, Airport Zoning Commission, for that part of a meeting or that meeting. So again, won't go into too much detail because again, we would actually do a special briefing for you in that. It's something that comes up occasionally. And with that, I know that's been super exciting, but I'm going to pivot to Lauren here. She's going to get into a little more detail with you on some of the things that staff does and works with.
All right. Mine's quick and exciting. Talk about staff. People you like, right? So we are your liaison, staff liaison to you as the commission. We prepare the case materials. Prior to that, we coordinate with other city staff, we coordinate with the applicant teams, then we put together the case materials and then come here and make a presentation and advise the commission. Our engineering department assists with our technical information, a lot of times the review recommendations, traffic, drainage, infrastructure, those kind of things that come up a lot with our cases that we review. So again, our work involves a lot of kind of what we've talked about, the long-range planning that Ruth mentioned, facilitating some of the work items that come out of those plans, out of those master plans, working with the public, educating our decision makers, you all, the council, working through technical recommendations, and then implementing the plans, and regulating, doing the development review for the plans that you see, the site plans that come out of some of the zoning cases that you all look at, or the conditional use permits, and taking it that extra step after the commission and council have taken action. And a lot of behind the scenes work that the commission doesn't always see. We receive an application, we work with the applicant, we work with any of the public that are interested or that it may impact. We review the application, we review it as staff, we do the technical review, do all the meeting prep, public hearing notices. So there's a lot that goes into the things that you all see before you see them here at the commission level. And some of that goes into our review and prep for when we do come before the commission. So you all see the staff reports that we put together for you all before any items, our presentations that we put together. We work with the applicants to put together their presentations. And then part of the review is through our Development Review Committee. So that's where we take a look at some of the more technical items, the traffic, drainage, utilities, how it's all going to tie into the rest of the development around it. And part of that, kind of going into more about the Development Review Committee, that is our Staff Review Committee, co-chaired by both Planning and Engineering, but also attended by several other city staff departments that are involved heavily in the review of really everything. Everything that you all see, each of these departments have some input in it, whether it's a plat, all the way from a plat to conditional use permit to our more intensive zoning cases, all reviewed by staff for a period of time and going back and forth with the applicant, and that's what this team does here. And then after the commission and council action, we take the plats and we work with the applicant team to get them recorded at the county. And then, you all or council, you've recommended and council has approved a CUP or a zoning case, and the applicant's now coming forward and submitting their site plans and their building permits, and we go through that review versus whatever's been approved from an ordinance standpoint, and then as well as from our different development code, design standards, international building codes, and take it to that level as well. And these, just a highlight of the administrative plats. I know Doug went over the plats that you all see as the commission, but what we don't take forward to the commission and what's authorized to be able to be reviewed by staff and approved by city manager and mayor are our administrative plats. So that's our minor plats and our amending plats, where there's some criteria that has to be met to qualify for those plats. So access to utilities, to roadways, creating less than 4 or fewer lots. So we do that a lot with some of our smaller vacant commercial properties that are being platted for the first time, or they are being replatted out of a larger plat. Sometimes minor adjustments to lot lines of existing properties can qualify for those plats as well. And I'm going to hand back to Ruth and Lisa for some work plan.
Okay, I'm going to be Lisa. Okay, so looking ahead, there are several different items that happen on an annual basis that we bring forward to the commission. The master plan annual reports, which I mentioned earlier, the capital improvement program, which the commission reviews and provides a recommendation to council on, and then training. We also have master plans, as well as some strategic projects that you will be involved with, some updates to the development code, and then an opportunity to review any takeaways from the Texas APA conference. So in the spring is when we typically bring forward the CIP review and recommendation, and then in the fall is when the American Planning Association Texas Chapter Conference will take place. We'll also have the annual orientation like we're doing this evening, and then the master plan annual reports, which we'll be seeing in the next month or so. We also have an expectation that Planning and Zoning Commission members take turns attending city council meetings, so you can be aware of what's happening with that group. And so there's a designated liaison for each of the city council meetings, and that rotates on a monthly basis. And unfortunately, that is really hard to read, and I apologize for that. But the schedule for 2022 will be coming out in November, is what that says. So you haven't missed it if you haven't seen it yet. And so now I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about some of the projects that are coming up that'll be coming before you that are more on the work plan side as opposed to being development driven. And so first is the wastewater master plan update. I mentioned this earlier. It was last updated in 2012, and the ongoing update is going to address the current policy needs for utilities in our extraterritorial jurisdiction, or ETJ. It will expand the planning area to include Great Wind New Territory, which had been annexed since the last time it was updated, and then also incorporates recommendations from the Integrated Water Resources Plan. The commission's role in this is to provide feedback on policy recommendations and the update, and to make a recommendation to City Council on the plan. We are anticipating bringing forward a public hearing and hopefully receiving your recommendation that evening on the update coming up next month in November. And we've also been working on an amendment to the Water Master Plan, which was last updated in 2012 and 2015. And this amendment specifically addresses the policy needs and planning for areas south of the Brazos River. So we've actually kind of dovetailed this work into the work that we're doing on the Wastewater Master Plan, because there's a lot of overlap there. The main difference is that this is really focused on south of the Brazos, whereas the Wastewater Master Plan is for the whole city. And so this included areas such as River Park, Greatwood, and then some of the other rural areas down there south of the Brazos. And same role for this one as the other. And then actually we're going to be bringing forward a public hearing for you that same evening on the Water Master Plan as well as the Wastewater Master Plan. So you'll get to take a look at two different master plans in one night. Another master plan that we have underway is the Mobility Master Plan, which is a really exciting one that we're working on, where we are integrating several existing mobility-related plans. So we have the Master Thoroughfare Plan and the Pedestrian and Bicycle Master Plan, which are official master plans, and then the Comprehensive Mobility Plan, which is a guiding document. It kind of looks and talks like a master plan, but it's not an official master plan. And so this Mobility Master Plan is going to replace those and become the official master plan for mobility in the city. And it's really in an effort to achieve superior mobility by shifting our focus to moving people and not just moving vehicles. We want to provide multiple transportation options to residents, visitors, employees, and tourists. And so once we wrap up this mobility master plan, then we will from there move into doing some local area neighborhood corridor plans, where we will look at more specific areas of the city to identify how we can improve mobility for smaller areas of the city. So this is really kind of looking at a higher level and citywide mobility. So like the other master plans, you'll be providing feedback on policy recommendations and ultimately making a recommendation to council on the plan. Thus far, the commission was provided an introduction to the project and the state of mobility back in November of last year, so about a year ago. And then just a couple of months ago, you got to participate in a joint workshop with the city council where we reviewed the goals that were drafted for the master plan. The next step, the thing that we're working on now, is putting together some strategies and metrics recommendations. And so that will be the next thing that we bring back to you, probably spring, summer next year, but that will be fleshed out a little bit more in the coming months. And Tim Hart, one of our planning and zoning commissioners, is actually on our mobility task force as well. So he's got a good ear into that in that conversation as well. Another really important project that we're working on is the land use plan implementation for regional and neighborhood activity centers. As I mentioned earlier, the land use plan was adopted in 2018 and provides policy direction and guidance for land use decisions. One of the high priority action items was for us to evaluate the best way to implement RACs and NACS. And that was specifically to consider whether we should create a new zoning district or multiple zoning districts, or continue using the plan development district, which is really the only tool we currently have right now to implement mixed-use development. And so the vision for these areas is for them to be mixed use, and your role is to provide input on that future zoning approach. You may remember that we did a stakeholder interview with the commission earlier this year, where we heard from you on kind of how you think things have gone so far and what you see for the future. We do anticipate bringing forward the results of the work we did with our consultant coming up later this fall, winter timeframe, and we'll give you some more details about that soon. But we're going to hopefully do that in a joint meeting with the city council, where we can have kind of a broader conversation with both groups. So really excited to get to that point on that project. And I think this is the last one, but not the least for sure. So we are going to be endeavoring on updating our comprehensive plan. So in the next year, we're going to be working on starting to scope out the plan update and identify what all we need to do with it. The last time the plan was adopted, or at least chapters 1 through 5, was back in 2012, and that was based on a 2009 community summit. So it's been a while since we've engaged the whole community on kind of the broader comprehensive plan. So some of the goals that we have for that update are to incorporate the 2020 census data, which has come out recently. We want to define the community vision for a post-pandemic and disrupted world. So as you know, our world has changed a lot in the last 10 years. And so we want to think about what do we want to be in the future and how has these last few years especially impacted us. Really want to focus on broad community engagement and trying to reach groups in the community that have not been involved in planning processes in the past, and looking for kind of creative ways to engage new groups in the process. We're looking at establishing a neighborhood planning process where we can work directly with specific areas of the community to determine what do they want for their community in the future, and are there things that we need to be doing as a city to help them get there. And then finally, we want to focus on implementation. Our current comprehensive plan has some really good elements of it, but it's kind of broad and it doesn't have a lot of great guidance for how to actually implement it. And so we want to kind of take it to that next level and give us some really good direction on how to implement it so we can really use it. So just like with the master plans, we'll be looking to you to provide feedback on policy recommendations and make a recommendation to City Council on the plan. I imagine we'll be working with the Commission along the way as we develop a task force and have some points along the way where we're getting your feedback. And so initially, part of what we're going to be doing, as I mentioned, is identifying what the scope is, and so we'll be working with you to see kind of what is it that you think we need to address in this comprehensive plan update. We don't know the timing exactly yet, but it should be in the next year or so. And so we just kind of want to let you know, kind of get your brain thinking a little bit about the comprehensive plan and what you might think it needs to be in the future. So unless you have any questions on that, I'm going to hand it over to Anjali. Oh, Dan has a question. Yes, sir.
Thank you all for your presentations. Quick question, if we're going to be looking at wastewater and water, number 9, are there draft versions of those online?
They are not. So we'll be providing you with the executive summaries in advance of the meeting. They're not real long. The full documents themselves, for Homeland Security reasons, we can't actually put them out there for the public to access. But we'll provide you the executive summaries that have like the meat of what you really will want to read. The full documents are pretty long and really, really technical. So I think the executive summary will serve you well. So you'll be getting that in advance of the meeting, though.
So executive summary is the best I can hope for.
We'll have to find out if we can provide you with the full document in a different way besides just putting it on like we typically would.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so in this last portion of the orientation, I'll be going over the laws governing P&Z procedures and specifically the state laws contained in the Open Meetings Act. And I'll also be going over some rules about conflict of interest, and then I'll end with some important points to take away. I know it's fascinating stuff, but we're almost there. Okay, so the Texas Open Meetings Act was enacted in the first place to promote transparency and accountability. And it does that by requiring the commission, it requires the commission's decision-making process to be open to the public. And this commission is subject to the act just like city council and all the other city boards. And the act applies to all of our P&Z meetings as you all meet in a quorum to discuss public business. And it can also apply even when a quorum is not present, but I'll touch more on that later. The act doesn't apply just because you all happen to be at the same place at the same time. So for example, for social functions or workshops where public business is not discussed, the act does not apply. So just a quick review on some important definitions. As to what constitutes a quorum, the Act defines a quorum as a majority of a government body. So for this commission, a quorum is 5 members. And as far as what constitutes an actual meeting under the Act, well, a meeting will occur when a quorum of the governmental body gathers, public business is discussed, and a member participates in the discussion, or, as with these P&Z meetings, the governmental body calls the meeting and conducts or is responsible for the meeting. The Act sets forth certain basic notice requirements. For one, we are required to post written notice of a meeting 72 hours in advance of the meeting. And the written notice requires the date, hour, place, and subject of each meeting. And the notice has to be sufficiently detailed to give the general public a good idea of the subject matter to be discussed. It can't really be vague. The Act also has certain requirements for record keeping. Specifically, there are minutes that must be prepared, and the minutes have to state the subject of each deliberation, indicate each vote, or, what the decision was that was taken. And so this is what our awesome City Secretary's office handles. A couple of the procedures and the requirements to note. A commission meeting can't be convened unless a quorum is actually present in the meeting room. The Act does not entitle members of the public to speak at open meetings. Now, that being said, we do have a public comment portion where we allow members of the public to speak if they so choose. However, if a member of the public asks a question about an item that is not on the agenda, this commission cannot discuss that item. And the response to that individual is limited to one of three things: a statement of fact regarding the issue, a statement of policy regarding the issue, or a proposal by one of you to place the item on a future agenda for deliberation. There are times when this commission can go into executive session or a closed meeting, but it's only in very specific circumstances. So, for example, to discuss certain economic development issues or to receive legal advice from an attorney. There are certain statutory procedures set forth here that the commission would have to follow in order to go into a closed meeting, but I will say it's very rare that the commission will need to do this in the first place. And ultimately, anyway, the final action or vote on any item can only take place in the open meeting. So it's very important to comply with the Open Meetings Act because there are consequences for violations of the Act. Any person can bring a lawsuit to force compliance with the Act, to enjoin a commission from acting, or to void an action taken by the commission. And there can also be criminal penalties. So, for example, it's a Class C misdemeanor to participate in a closed meeting while knowing that a certified agenda or tape recording is not being made. It's a Class B misdemeanor to knowingly disclose a recording of a closed meeting to a member of the public. And it's a Class B misdemeanor to knowingly call, aid in calling, organize, or participate in an unlawful closed meeting. It's also a Class B misdemeanor to participate in a prohibited series of communications, and this is also known as the walking quorum. I know the legal language on this slide looks like a lot. We had to put it up there, but the idea is basically this. So say 3 commissioners, in person or through email, communicate about an item that's before the commission. You'd originally think maybe, 3 commissioners, that's not a quorum, no big deal. But if any of those 3 commissioners then go ahead and separately speak about the issue to other commissioners, ultimately a quorum of the commissioners could have deliberated about the issue. And if any of the commissioners knew that a quorum would eventually be involved and that deliberation would occur with all of these separate conversations, then the commissioner will be subject to criminal penalties. And that's even if they only participated in one communication with a single commissioner. So the idea behind this is that if board members or commissioners are communicating in less than a quorum to intentionally or knowingly circumvent the act, criminal penalties can be imposed. What are the best ways to avoid this? Don't communicate about commission items outside of these meetings. Don't send emails to the other commissioners about items before the commission. And definitely do not reply all to any emails with the other commissioners on the email chain. As commissioners, you're required to participate in education training sessions, and this training must be done within 90 days of taking the oath of office or otherwise assuming the responsibilities of office. The training can be done through the Attorney General's website. We can make this link available to you afterward if you need it. The certificate has to be printed and provided to the City Secretary's office. So that pretty much covers the Open Meetings Act. we're now going to move forward to rules on conflicts of interest. And the general rule is this: as commissioners, you have to abstain from participation in, discussion of, and voting on a matter if you have some kind of personal interest in the matter. So, for example, if you have a family member that would benefit from a matter that's before the commission, whether they benefit personally or financially, or if you're involved in a company that would somehow benefit, then you potentially have a conflict of interest. Another example is if you do business with a company that's involved in the matter to be voted on, that's also a potential conflict of interest. So if you think that you do have a conflict of interest, you are required to file an affidavit with the city secretary's office, and that affidavit has to state the nature and the extent of the interest. The city secretary's office does have the affidavit form, so you can just reach out to them, and that affidavit has to be filed before the meeting during which a vote or decision is taken on the matter. And once the matter comes before the commission, if you have the conflict, you're required to abstain from voting. And you're supposed to abstain from participation generally. And usually how that'll work is we'll just ask you to step outside of the room while that matter is being deliberated. So if you were to vote on something where you did have a conflict of interest, I mean, sometimes accidents will happen and, maybe you didn't realize until after the fact, you should know the action itself isn't voidable. Unless the person with the conflict would have been the deciding vote. So in other words, that person would have affected the outcome of the decision. If you have a conflict and you knowingly vote anyway, you would face a potential Class A misdemeanor. The same thing applies if you have an interest in a subdivided tract. You just file the affidavit with the city secretary's office before the meeting in which a decision regarding approval of the plat will be made. Okay, so these next two slides is basically just a flow chart to help you, the kind of questions that you ask yourself to determine if you have a conflict of interest. It's kind of small, and we can make this available to you afterward if you'd like. But honestly, the best practice is to generally, if there's any chance you might think you have a conflict of interest, just reach out to staff and we will help you, we'll guide you, on the question of whether there is actually a conflict or, if you have to abstain from voting, if you have to file the affidavit. So we're here to help you. Okay, so lastly, some important points to take away. You have to have a quorum to have a meeting or take any action. If it's not on the agenda, do not discuss the item, do not communicate or send emails to other commissioners about commission business outside of these meetings. And if an applicant happens to contact one of you, just direct the applicant to contact city staff. And that is it for me, unless you all have any questions.
Real quick question.
Yeah.
How do we handle, or is it a conflict if something comes before the commission and it's adjacent to property that we own, like our residence, let's say?
I think it's going to be a very fact-specific determination. So in that case, you would reach out to city staff, and then you kind of give them the details of what exactly is going on. I don't want to give you any hard answers one way or another because it's always very fact-specific.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was very, very interesting and very, very helpful. I'd like to thank each of you from city staff who were here tonight and participated, or even if you didn't participate in the presentation for engineering department. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate your excellent work on a day-to-day basis, and you guys do all the heavy lifting for us. So thank you for all that you do, and thank you for the preparation and information tonight. And with that, we will go on to item 6, facts, findings, and recommendation. A, consideration of and action on a recommendation of a proposed conditional use permit for the establishment of a car dealership for the Porsche Sugarland on approximately 1.110 acres located between US 90A and US 59, the Southwest Freeway, east of Derry, Ashford, to the members of the City Council. Laura Waller, Planner 2. Good evening again.
So we have just a little bit more to go.
This will be a recap for some of you, but I know there were several of you who were not here, including our new member, Ms. Smith. So I'll go through it with a little bit more detail than I might otherwise for a CNA. So this is a proposal for a Porsche dealership conditional use permit. This is in a B2 general business zoning area, which is required to have a conditional use permit for all auto-related businesses. In this instance, it is a sales lot for car dealerships. This is located in the little triangle between 59 along the south, 90 on the top, and then this is Derry Ashford over here. So it's nestled right in here between the Marriott and America's Home. It's a hotel. It's currently vacant between the Extended Homestay America, there we go, Spring Hill Suites. This was annexed in 1984 with the rest of the City of Cities MUD and has remained vacant since then. The facility is proposed to be just under 150,000 square feet and to include 233 parking spaces, 12 service bays, 4 wash detail bays, and a little over 11,000 square feet of showroom and sales. Some pretty key points for this are that there is no nearby residential property. Typically, whenever we're concerned with auto-related businesses, it's about the impact to the residential areas that are nearby. Luckily, this area is pretty isolated because of those large roads that are on either side. So it is fairly isolated from residential property. Additionally, due to the design of the site, all activity and storage of inventory is to be inside the structure. So if there's no nearby residential and all the inventory is inside, that takes care of most of the mitigation that the commission normally imposes on the site. And this does align with the future land use plan as part of a regional activity center. So this is a 3D rendering of about what it's going to look like. This is not to be codified as part of the CUP ordinance. This is just for reference so you can get a better idea of exactly what this building is potentially going to look like. This view is about from 59, approximately. So a little bit of overview of the specifics of the site. The access is from 2 existing public access easements that have drives to the surrounding hotels and the nearby shopping center, as well as with connection to the road frontage along the Audi dealership. There is an option for 6 surface spots, as well as overflow parking in the garage, and then employee parking is on the roof of the structure. The vehicle transporter circulation plan includes entering from the 59 frontage road to the Marketplace access drive, then backing into the surface lot to unload in a specifically designated area on the site plan, and then pulling back onto the 59 frontage road via another access drive that connects to Park Lane Boulevard. So here's the site plan, the basic site plan. You can see it is a pretty large building that takes up most of the lot. The 6 surface spots are here, they face. So this is the US frontage road here, 59 frontage road. So you would enter, and then the vehicle transporter would back in, unload in this specific area. It's boxed off and shown on the site plan, and then pull back out to exit. Customers could pull in and pull into any of these spots or pull into the garage. The garage is also where you would enter for service bays and other machinery delivery or parts delivery. There is also a cut through here on the left that shows that this does meet all of the lighting regulations. We do have a recent amendment to the development code that requires all internal and external lighting be full cutoff, either through the design of the building or with the fixture. So that is shown here, as well as elevations of the fence to be wrought iron and a masonry gate for the dumpster enclosure. Here are the floor plans for the 6 floors. All of the purple area is inventory parking. This teal shape here on the top, that's the roof for the employee parking. And then the other areas have miscellaneous wash bays, details, sales, or repair work also. There's a significant amount of repair room for maintenance of the vehicles. We also have included the elevations, detailed elevations. Staff did work with the liaisons to get the percentage of primary versus secondary finishes to above a 70-30%. That's typically what we see in conditional use permits. So there was some adjustment that happened there to make sure that we did meet those percentages as we've seen in the past. And so this is the final layout that's been proposed. And then you can see here, it's openings for the parking garage. So you, on all sides, it's either the metal or glass for the most part. The landscape plan does have a little bit of extra. We have the 4-inch caliper trees versus 2.5 that's required, as well as trees along the rear of the building. Those are typically not required, but in order to help mitigate some of the just the immense, just the massiveness of the structure, since it's such a close space and such a tall structure, we asked for a little bit extra landscaping around those back edges. And then this is the vehicle transporter circulation plan. So here you can see again, coming in off of 59 frontage onto the access boulevard, backing in and then unloading on site, and then continuing to pull out back to Park Lane Boulevard. So this is a zoom out, so you can just see a little bit better. This aerial image is not going to be codified. The other more technical plan will, but this is just to give you a better idea. So coming in on the frontage road, this is the site here. So you would pull in, back in, and then pull out and continue back to Park Lane, and then continue down where Park Lane then turns into the access road to turn onto 59. The future land use plan does support the mid to high-rise buildings. So this is a 6-story building with the parking garage structure. The rack is described to include offices, retail, residential support, and multifamily housing. So this modern design and lack of outdoor sales lots are ideal for the future vision of this specific regional activity center. A recap of the meeting that was held in September. There were no speakers present, and we did receive minimal comments. There was some questions and some discussion back and forth, but ultimately direction was to move forward for consideration and action with no changes made to the plans. So staff has also received no inquiry since the time of the last meeting and is not aware of any opposition. So a recap, the points for consideration, just over 1 acre vacant commercial site proposed to be a car dealership. It was annexed in 1984 and has remained vacant since then. It's near property with similar intensities, uses, including the Audi dealership, 2 large hotels, and a large shopping center. And there are no shared property lines with single-family residential districts. The closest residential property is the Sugar Creek development, which is south across the US 59 freeway. And then you have to pass commercial areas even on the other side to get to the actual entrance of the neighborhood. The requested conditional use permit is compatible with the existing uses, and you can recommend additional conditions to the CUP, which would ensure that it's developed as proposed and mitigate any other negative impacts. Staff does have a list of recommended conditions that we've already compiled from past cases, and looking at this case, they've been adjusted a little bit because this is a unique site and that everything's already indoors. So some of those proposed conditions are a little bit changed. This does appear to be well suited to the location. So because it's between 2 major highways, just off of Derry Ashford, this does allow for a lot more access and a lot easier travel. And it does utilize existing entrances, so it's not adding any entrances to any of the major highways. So this is the list of recommended conditions. Y'all have them in your packets as well. We went through them last time. Pretty much that it follows the proposed exhibits. Garage doors must be closed when not in operation. No collision repair of vehicles. Outside voice paging or sound systems are prohibited, and that's signs are not allowed to be on the inventory if they're made to be seen from a public street. That's not allowed. Only the manufacturer's invoice stickers are going to be on the cars. Truck delivery vehicles have to enter and exit the site in accordance with the vehicle transporter plan, and loading and unloading of the vehicle inventory will only occur on the designated area and is prohibited on the public access easements. And there will be required to be directional signage in conformance with the architecture of the area to be provided for those vehicle transporters. Staff, and we do have the applicant here for any questions from you guys before we move forward with consideration and action. I'll turn it back over.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. So we usually start at the end and we'll kind of work our way in. Commissioner Smith, If you were here with us, you'd be at the end, so I will start with you and ask if you have any questions.
I don't have any questions this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Englert?
Lauren, I just want to appreciate the work that you've done with the applicant, and I agree with the staff's recommendations on the conditions to use it. And it's really a nice design and a really great use of a vacant property. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Brown?
Yeah, I've got a few questions for the applicant. Who's here that can answer questions for me? Got four of them.
Got a couple options for you. So if you want to go ahead with your question.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for coming tonight. I think a lot of us shared last time. We think it's a great use of a 1.11 acre site, so you're bringing that to the community. My questions, three of them kind of are around the development of the property. It's a small site. Where are you going to have all the contractors and builders park during this process? What's the plan?
That's a really good question.
And
I'm going to turn
before you pass the buck, just whoever speaks, be sure to introduce yourself for the record.
Well, we just figured out how we were going to work the crane through the site. Oh, sorry. I'm Jimmy McBee with Christensen Building Group. We're providing pre-construction services to Poor Sugar Land and Gorey Architects, so we're running real-time budgeting, scheduling, material procurement, and feasibility really on the site. Like I said, we just figured out how we were going to run the crane through there and erect this thing without disrupting traffic. Contractor parking, we're probably going to be reaching out to the neighbor next door about renting space from the dialysis and the church group there, because 40% of the lot on a daily basis has no people parking there. So that was going to be the first kind of option. Reach out to them and maybe pay for spaces and
You're going to need a plan for that because you're going to have a lot of people in a site you're not going to be able to utilize
That's
it
right.
all, right? Because you're developing every bit of that site. And then the services that come along with that, right? The food trucks and the watering trucks and all the other things. So,
we're providing pre-construction services, and ultimately we'll have to compete to bid on the project to win it. But typically, as you know, speaking for my company, we don't usually let those guys show up, even though they do, obviously. But you got to rely on our field engineers to kind of shoo them off and keep them at a minimum and keep glass off the site.
yeah, and the same question applies for staging materials, right?
Right.
You're going to be having to stage a lot of this stuff before you're able to construct.
For the construction, it's a precast concrete structure, so it's going to be on an as-needed basis. So they're going to be coming out quite a bit, bringing a few pieces slowly but surely, rather than all at once. So it's going to be staged basically at the front end of the property, and the crane will be erecting at the back end closest to one of the hotels and working his way out. The good thing is once that structure's in place and we start to really build it out with a lot of people, with a skilled tradesman, they can park in the garage. So you have that.
And same applies to cleanouts for concrete trucks or anything else you have.
Yeah.
Again,
All
something
that
else you'll need
in
to make
compliance with the EPA
consideration
and-
of.
Right.
And then, and I think for staff, I think there needs to be consideration for this. There needs to be a plan for that as part of this project. I have no doubt that as a high-end Porsche dealership, you guys aren't going to bring anything but the best to our community, but consideration for that. And then my last one is in terms of the transport circulation, I understand that's part of the CUP, but most transport drivers are good guys. What do you do in enforcement if you don't have, that becomes a problem? How does that looked at?
So I can speak to that. We have had some issues with some of the other dealerships occasionally trying to unload on the easements or the surrounding roads, in which case our city code enforcement goes out there and they're issued citations, and they have to comply in the future, or they get citations from the city. Additionally, I did want to just mention that a lot of the staging, the traffic for the parking, all of that is reviewed in our site plan process as well, so we will keep that in mind. Additionally, if they do choose to or are able to rent some parking spaces from the neighboring property, they would not be able to do that if it throws that lot out of compliance. So that lot would have to have excess or excess parking spaces in order to be able to do that.
Good.
So, but we would work with both property owners if that is the option they want to take.
Again, I think it's a great use of the site. We're excited to have you guys, and the building looks fantastic. So thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Hart?
I guess this is for engineering. This is a greenfield project not been developed before? Is there no detention requirements for this?
See, you're glad you came now, huh?
I was waiting for that. Guillermo's a civil engineering department. Yeah, we are working with them before, when the process is CUP for detention, and they are detaining, is no impact downstream on the detention pond.
So it's off-site or something?
On-site detention, yes.
Oh, okay. And what's the big green thing? It looks like a big concrete green area. Oh, is it cricket?
I think it's a cricket pitch here.
Oh,
I think that's
okay.
what it was. Yeah, it's nothing that I know.
Yeah, so the site before was used as part of the HOA for a small cricket field, but that's the only thing that's ever been done on the site.
Okay.
So we call that still vacant because it was used as an empty field for the most part.
Sure. No, thank you. Yeah, looks good. Thank you. That was all I had.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Parikh?
Yeah, no real questions. I've driven through the site since the last meeting, and it is, as everyone's mentioned, tight, but I think it's going to be a great addition to the community, and I think I had some similar questions to Chuck, and it looks like there's a plan to mitigate some of those concerns. So great job, Lauren, and thank you to the applicant for coming as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Ushold? Sir.
Yeah, that's all right. You got me too, Taylor. Lauren, a question for you. I saw something in the last slide, the previous slide, about signage, and I'm making a swag here. Isn't that part of the First Colony signage requirements?
No, this area is not governed by First Colony. If anything, it would be governed by the Sugar Creek Property Owners Association. But directional signage it would not follow any of those rules. Directional signage, especially for these vehicle transporter plans, would have to be in conformance with, I guess the HOA would be able to approve it and to require any prettiness to make it pretty.
Okay.
But it would still have to follow these specific regulations as put by the
All
city.
right. All right. Yeah, I don't remember seeing that from the last time. Maybe it was there and I just missed it. No, that's all I had. Thank you. Look forward to seeing if we can make this happen.
Thank you. Commissioner Landine?
Just one question on the conditions. Laura, can you explain it's on-site collision repair of vehicles is prohibited. So that, obviously mechanical repair is going on there. Why are we making a distinction between?
So collision repair tends to be more intense. It has a lot of body work. A bit more goes into that as far as like paint rooms, some aerosol stuff. It tends to involve little bit bigger machinery. So that is why we typically don't allow it at the car dealerships. We would allow that at an auto repair shop that includes full collision repair. But it does tend to be a little bit more intense, creates more noise. You also tend to see a bit more of just kind of parts and different things sitting around. Sometimes it can, at this side, obviously it'd be indoors, so it wouldn't be as big a deal. But that's typically why we recommend against having that at car dealerships.
And I assume that presents no problems for the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. There's a lot of nodding heads in the right direction behind you, so very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Simeon?
Hi, yes, I missed the first meeting, but I feel like I'm up to speed. It was a good report and good presentation. We appreciate it. I do have concerns on the construction side, though. Having done a few traffic control plans in my day, have you run this preliminary information past TxDOT? It's bound to interfere with the service road. Are they on board? Are you that far?
Yeah. So I'm Roy with GoRectex, and yes, we do have reports that we submitted with the initial document binding, which has TxDOT documentation approval and letter of confirmation.
Okay.
So we can forward that back to you, Laura, and you can probably attach it.
So I believe that's part of the traffic impact analysis, the under construction as well as once the building is operational, and that is reviewed and it has been concurred with by city staff.
Okay.
And that did require TxDOT review as well.
Okay, good. So just out of curiosity, is that going to include, what's the name of the road in front, Park Lane? Is that?
So there's actually two unnamed roads. Those are just access easements. They don't have names.
Okay.
So they're considered public access easements.
Okay. So the hotels use them, right? I mean, the
Yes, that is
surrounding
what they're
businesses
used for,
use
is
them.
for the hotels.
Are we going to have closures there and detours and these sort of things?
I'm not sure. I'm not the one who, I don't review
Right, I don't
the
know if
traffic
that's
impact
too,
plan.
too much detail at this point, but I'm
I
just
don't know.
wondering about the impacts of the traffic control. I know it'll be significant.
Sure, we'll have
over
your
a
approach
long
tie-ins.
Piece of time.
We'll have approach tie-ins, but even those will be barreled off, and they would still have traffic, you'd still be able to get by, it wouldn't be a full closure.
Of the access way?
Right, of the access road, that's right.
Okay.
And typically, ultimately, I think there'd be a plan in the documents for that as well, that would show how we'd have to meet text
Yeah.
dot requirements, barrel it off, and make that tie-in for the approaches.
Okay, okay. All right, well, I think together with Chuck's concerns, that'll cover it for me. Thank you.
Okay, I have a few questions. First of all, can you talk to us a little, is there a plan in place for how customers are going to test drive vehicles, and do we have any issues in that respect with the Audi dealership?
So there is a limited feasibility for us to put exact parameters on the test drives because it's not done within the site. All of the CUP materials are typically limited to what you're able to control inside the site. The plan right now is to exit to the north through the access easement to Park Lane, go north on 90, and then connect around and loop around, and then come back in 59 and enter from the south side of the site. That is what's outlined in the applicant letter. That's in the staff report. It's in the last paragraph on the first page there. And staff does not currently see any issue with that. Our traffic department did not have any concerns with that. But there's no specific condition that we can tie into to enforce that.
And is it fair to say that staff is not aware of any issues related to customer test drives in connection with the Audi facility?
Correct.
Okay,
Staff
great.
is not aware of any of those issues.
Okay, a couple of other things. With regard to the site, to the proposed conditions
Mhm.
that staff is proposing, I see that you did a couple slides on them, and that was helpful. Where is the language, the precise language of the conditions that are being proposed? Is that what we see in connection with the
Yes.
agenda request under
So
proposed conditions?
In the recommended action on the front page, those exact bullet points is what we are going to send to the legal department when they work up the ordinance. So it will be those items. Whenever the ordinance is written, you'll be able to see it on the
Okay.
agenda for the next city council
And what's
meeting.
on there is the same as?
What's in the
this-
slide
what's in
and
the-
in the
and
co-
in the
in-
report, in the
Mhm.
packet. Okay. That's great. On the architectural site plan, just a curiosity question. So on the site plan notes on 25, there's a reference to, looks like 30 feet, 0 inches, reciprocal easement, see note from civil. Where's the note?
The note is in the civil construction plans. We can have them pull that number off of these site plan notes. But it's asking, what it's referring to is this reciprocal, this access, the public access easement here.
Okay.
This is their 30-foot portion of it.
And did I hear you correctly that there were some additional landscaping changes that were incorporated since this was?
No,
No
these are just,
changes?
these have been since, we've worked through several submittals with them before we even brought it to you. So this
Okay.
was from some of those initial submittals. But everything that you saw tonight is the same as what was presented at the last meeting.
You've answered my question. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion. But quick question first, Laura, do I need to go ahead and read all of the
Well,
conditions?
I'll read it. Let me go ahead and read it for the record. And then,
Okay,
and then
great.
I don't think, I mean, as long as you, well, I'll ask our city attorney. Do you want us to read the conditions?
Yeah, I would make the motion, and then if you want to read it, that's fine, but the condition should be part of the motion.
Just make the whole motion if you want.
Okay. Let me make sure I have what I need for that. These are minutes. Well, I know, but those
I
are
think
minutes.
there's
I don't have the
9
right
of
one
them.
in front of me. Okay.
I'll go ahead and get started.
All right, go ahead.
So I'll make a motion for approval to the mayor and city council for the conditional use permit for the development of an auto dealership with the following conditions. The site be developed in accordance with the attached site plan, elevations, landscaping plan, and vehicle transporter circulation plan. That garage doors on entrances be closed when not in operation. On-site collision repair of vehicles is prohibited. An outside voice paging or sound system is prohibited. Signs relating to the sales of vehicles other than the manufacturer's dealer's invoice sticker or signs required by law shall not be allowed on automotive inventory if the vehicle is visible from a public street. Truck delivery vehicles must enter and exit the site in accordance with the vehicle transporter circulation plan. The loading and unloading of vehicle inventory shall comply with the two following sub-conditions: only occur within the designated area as depicted on the site plan, and secondly, be prohibited on public access easements as depicted in the vehicle transporter circulation plan. And finally, directional signage no greater than 9 square feet and in conformance with the architectural treatment of the site will be provided for vehicle transporters.
That's the motion. I'll second it. Any further discussion? All right, if you'll please vote at this time.
There we go.
Commissioner Hart?
He's got it.
Oh, there it is. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Congratulations and best of luck to the
Good luck.
applicant.
Yeah.
We'll be watching this one with
Thank
great,
you.
we'll be watching this with great interest. Item 7, reports. A, Planning and Zoning Commission Liaison Reports. City Council meeting August 3rd, 2021.
At long last.
We've been waiting.
Yes. Before there was fire. No, on August 3rd, item that concerned this body was the first consideration of the ordinance providing for a change of zoning from interim standard single-family residential R1-I district to standard single-family residential R-1 district for approximately 4.81 acres of land located at 12430 Alston Road between Ashford Lakes, sections 1 and 8, and it passed. On August 17th, we had the second consideration of that same ordinance, and it passed. Is that enough, or do I need to read it again?
It's fine for a
Okay,
report.
for this report.
I mean, I'd
Yeah.
like you,
And there's-
I'd like you to submit it in writing. but-
There was nothing on the August 24th meeting that concerned this commission.
That's perfectly fine.
Thank you.
Well done.
Okay.
Okay, and that was the, was that the 24th in there also? And you had the 24th in there also? Okay. I had September 21st and 28th. I believe the only item pertaining to this commission that was acted on at those meetings was the first consideration of the ordinance amending the development code to allow for administrative approval of unenclosed patio covers between primary and accessory structures, and that one did pass. And then this, there were also, there were budget and tax presentations as well, and no other items pertinent to the commission at either the 21st or the 28th. October 5th?
Yeah, at October 5th, the unenclosed patio covers was on the consent agenda, and then it was, I got the pleasure of covering the National Night Out meeting, which is the shortest meeting of the year. So,
wow.
So there we go. That's it.
Okay, very good. Thank you, commissioners, for those excellent reports. 7B, city staff report.
Well, first off, I want to say Congratulations to a couple of you. So to you, Commissioner Gallagher, on your appointment as chair for another year, and Commissioner Simeon as an appointment for vice chair. So congratulations to you both. And then also congratulations to Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Hart, and welcome to Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Simeon, also on your overall reappointment for your 2-year terms to the commission. So happy you're all here. So in order for you to all participate, or for the 4 of you to participate that were reappointed or appointed newly, you had to take your oath. So that is a check off. You are done on that. However, the city council at the October 19th meeting, we'll be hosting a ceremonial oath of office that the 4 of you are welcome to participate in if you would like to join other board and commission members that are in the ceremonial oath taking before the council. So you're welcome to do that. However, I just learned also that as part of an annual requirement, you also have ethics training, which will also be taking place that night. I believe our city attorney has cooked up some very fun, exciting way to talk about ethics, and so that is something that is required of all of you. No, I think each year she tries to do a different game each year. So she likes to keep it fresh and mix it up. So so that is a requirement for all of you. So I'll be sending out information. I believe you can participate virtually, but you can also participate in person as well. So I'll get that information out to you.
That's October 19th?
October 19th, next Tuesday. Yes. Yep. So, and then lastly, we'll be getting information out to those of you that will be joining us at the Texas APA conference, whether it's in person or virtual. We'll get more details out to you, but I think we've heard from almost everybody, maybe 1 or 2 of you yet, so I'll try to catch you before the end of the meeting today. So thank you.
Next meeting?
But yes, the next meeting will be October 28th. Thank you. And we anticipate we'll be having a public hearing for you on the district at Sugar Creek PD. So that'll be coming forward. And then I believe there's one other item. Yes, the Crossing at Telfair PD amendment. So 2 PDs on your agenda for that night.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the heads up. That's helpful information. All right. I've got a motion to adjourn and a second. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.